to preview a brand new circuit for the F2 and F3 calendar. Welcome to episode 7 of Formula Talk, where we're here to preview about the Australian Grand Prix that is brand new, as mentioned, both for the F2 and F3 calendar this season. We'll also be discussing F1 Academy a little bit more in detail as well, about who the drivers are and a bit about the calendar and how it's going to be structured. My name is Sophia, and joining with me for the first Formula Talk debut, hi,
George. Good evening, Sophia. Thank you for having me on. I've been really impressed with what you and Tom have been doing so far, so I'm more than happy to fill in for Tom this week.
Oh, I'm so excited. I mean, Tom was meant to come join as well, but unfortunately other circumstances have come around. So I'm so happy you're here joining me as co-hosting for today's episode. Really excited. But first, we must also thank our sponsor for this episode, BetOnline. BetOnline remains your number one source for all your college basketball betting this season. Get analysis of every play, prop, and point at BetOnline. You'll find the latest odds, brackets, contests, team matchups, and game trends at BetOnline. Updated odds for everything from live games to conference championship right through the Final Four and championship game. BetOnline is your college basketball headquarters this season. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to sign up and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Be sure to use our promo BELIEVE, that is BLEAV, to receive your bonus. BetOnline.ag, where the game starts. Now let's get into it. So, Australia, never raced before. This is going to be probably the best indicator on how skill and raw talent will be, especially for the rookies in both F2 and F3, more so F3, because obviously they're even more of a rookie compared to obviously F2, but it's a whole new ballgame for it. What do you think?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I was very surprised, but also very happy when I saw that Australia was going to make its debut in F2 and F3. I mean, it's a championship that normally centres around Europe and the Middle East. So to go all the way out to Australia this year, it's a big change for him. And obviously, yeah, it's a track that only a few of the drivers may have raced on. Maybe some of the Aussies and the Kiwis may have raced around it at some point, but even those guys, they won't know it too well. So it's a very challenging circuit for these guys. It's going to be quite green as well. It's going to be in a street circuit, and it's not used that often outside of the F1 weekend. So it's going to be a big challenge for him. It's a blank slate for even the veterans like Ralph Boschung and Roy Nissany, like we've mentioned before. So I'm very excited to see how they get on this weekend.
Yeah, I think reading some articles, I think the only person that's been kind of the more slightly consistent that would be having access to the track is Tommy Smith. He's only raced in Australia, and he races in F3. He's a rookie. He started karting in Australia pretty much. Was his career before going into F3. But there's a lot of Aussies and Kiwis on both F2 and F3. So it'll be nice also to have a home race with them, because there's so many of these drivers who are European and they have opportunities to go for their home races or even second home races. So it's nice. I can't imagine the travel plan for it, but I mean, they have a big break afterwards. The next one for F2 is Baku, so it's a month, and then even longer than that for F3 because they're not racing in Baku this year because of the sprint race in F1. But let's kind of get into a little bit of some of the nitty-gritty statistics and some of the details, and also when the times will be in the UK for these races. My coffee, I've ordered so much coffee for this weekend, so I am running. Oh, it's going to be absolutely crazy, especially balancing a 9 to 5 on top of that. So similar to F1, the circuit length is 5.278 kilometers. As mentioned, it's the first time it's been held here. So we don't have a fastest lap at the moment. The sprint race will be 23 laps, and then the feature race will be 33 laps. So as always, sprint race will take place on Saturday morning. Might be a little bit different because of the time zone. And then Sunday, as usual, will be the feature. However, because it's in Australia and the time difference, it's a bit crazy. So for F2, the only free practice that will take place will be at midnight on Friday. Fun.
I mean, we shouldn't be complaining, should we? Really? I mean,
I know
we have a lot of
Twice.
Australian and New Zealander subscribers to our podcast.
I know.
They get this for 22, 21 races of the season. So we really shouldn't be complaining here. This is a small slice of what they have to put up with all year round. But yes, you are right. It's bad enough for the F1, but for the F2 and F3 in Europe, I must admit, I'm a dedicated fan, but I think I'll be watching the highlights on YouTube personally. I don't think I'll be tuning in live. But to the guys who are tuning in live, fair play to you. All power to you.
I think it's going to be a testament, like, because I'm so fortunate with working with Good Talk, I'm able to sit in the press conferences for F2 and F3 drivers. So I want to get in as well, because I know a lot of people that sit in these press conferences are European. So it's going to be interesting to see real testament of how determined we are to sit in these ones. I might miss qualifying, which for F2 takes place at 7:30 in the morning. I might be able to watch that, but on a Friday. But F2 free practice? No, I don't think so. Especially when the 9 to 5 as well on a Friday. I think I'm all right. Following from that is the sprint race. That is on Saturday at 4:20 in the morning. And then on can't say that with a straight face. And then on Sunday, the feature race is at 2:35 a.m. So very, very early morning. So if you're a very morning person, maybe this might be a great track. But I don't know how these fans, like Jared from Good Talk, obviously, like, living in Australia and watching and everything, like, I could not. I kicked off about Japan for F1 only and the time for that. So yeah, props to everybody that lives on that side of the world to wake up and watch it at these times. So predictions. What do you think for F2? Who you got your money on potentially?
Well, my pick at the start of the season to do really well was Théo Pourchaire. You know, it's his third season, I think, in F2. He's a supremely talented driver. He's still very young. I think he's only like 19 or something. Mm-hmm. And obviously, he had a very disappointing weekend in Jeddah. Didn't pick up points in either race after a relatively strong start at Bahrain. So, if I was going to pick anybody up pick anybody to win or do well in Australia, it's probably him. Obviously, you can't leave out Jack Doohan, though, the home hero, the favourite. I think he's another strong contender for the title this year, despite not the best start. But did get a podium in Jeddah in the second race there. So if I had to pick two, I'd probably say those two. And you never know, Arthur Leclerc, you know how good his brother Charles is around circuits like Monaco in qualifying, at least. So you never know. He's always an outside bet as well, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, with Formula 2 and Formula 3 as well, it's so unpredictable. You don't know. Like, having previous episodes with Tom, we were talking about our predictions that we've made from both in Bahrain and Jeddah. What I was way off. Tom was actually quite okay with his prediction for Jeddah. I think he got 2 of the podiums correctly, but reversed order. So it was fine. But I 100% agree with Théo Pourchaire. I also think his teammate, Victor Martins, could also come into play as well, given that he took pole in Jeddah, and he is quite fast. Like, the ART car is being quite a good car so far this season, consistently for the first 4 races, 2 rounds. I mean, Jack Doohan would be lovely to see. Like, also so great, like you said, hometown hero. His dad Mick always watches the races, an absolute legend in his field in motorsport career as well. I think that would be quite cool. But yeah, you don't know because it's all new. Like, there is no stats to look at, which is killing me because I love my stats and I love my statistics and I love my curses and probability. And this is so up in the air. I mean, I always say this person in all my episodes, Zane Maloney. I'm always backing him, given from the Caribbean. Well, I'm not Caribbean, but I'm an island. I'm
I'm gonna say Bermuda is not in the Caribbean.
It's not.
No, but I know the island mentality. You know, you stick together.
Yes, I'm coming from a small island and everything. I think I will always back this Zane. So I hope he can get a podium or take pole position. I think that'll be great, especially as a rookie and with the connections that he has with Red Bull, being a Red Bull junior driver, being a reserve driver for Red Bull as well. I think it'll be real. I would love to see some podiums from him this season, 100%. So maybe it could be Australia. But yeah, so looking into Formula 3, again, very similar to how its structure is in F2 and F1. However, a sprint race will be 20 laps, and then the feature race will be only 23. So a bit less, but obviously there's more cars on track. That's I'm fearful for. You got 32, 32, 33. 33, yeah.
I think there's 30, something like that, but there's a lot, isn't there? A lot more than F1.
Yeah, and F2. I think it's going to be crazy. I mean, bold prediction off the top of my head straight away, like, I think it'll just be, like, absolute carnage. Oh, God, yeah. Yeah. I think there's going to be at least a few safety cars and maybe a few red flags. I would say maybe about 5 DNFs as well. That could be my bold prediction. But the timings for it will be slightly the same as F2, but they raced before F2. So their free practice is actually at 10:45 p.m. on Thursday. So I might watch that. Might be interesting to see. Qualifying 4 a.m. on Friday. So, yeah, 4 a.m. on Friday. No, that's a no for me.
Yeah, not doing that. Not doing that.
Nope. Sprints at 12:45 a.m. I might be up if I decide to go out, and I'll just be like out in a pub watching it on my phone, maybe. But yeah, and then the feature race on Sunday is at 12:05 a.m. And again, if I'm out, maybe, but I rarely go out, especially when it's an F1 weekend. So,
God, the only thing I can liken that to is I may have mentioned it on the show before. I've definitely mentioned it in our Slack chats. It's when, because the Japanese Grand Prix is normally on my birthday weekend. So what I used to do as a student used to have a party, then go out and then come back, and I just watch the Japanese Grand Prix absolutely steaming, just having a pizza or something. You know, the timings for this weekend for F2 and F3 are. I mean, I'm sure some people complain about them being on too early. Usually for European rounds being on at like 8 or 9 o'clock, but it's nothing compared to this weekend. But on the flip side, it opens it up to a whole other audience that wouldn't really have a chance to watch these kinds of races because they'd be in unsociable hours, really. So swings and roundabouts, I suppose. But we are definitely we're definitely getting the worst start this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, most of the weekends, I think I work from about like 7 a.m., I think, to start prepping for watching F2 and F3 and getting ready for press conferences and everything. So it's a couple hours early, but that makes a big difference, especially for me. Like, I am not a morning person anymore. I make 9, I roll out of bed at 8:45 or 8:50 because I work from home. Like, and then I have 2 coffees minimum before I actually have anybody come at me with any kind of work to do. I just need to wake up pretty much. So we'll see. In terms of drivers for F3, anybody that might, I'm gonna say Gregor Saucy always as well, given that he is quite good and he's done well so far this season. I think he's gonna be just one of the consistent people that I'll have on podium. But I'm not sure about anybody else really off the top of my head that has stand out so far that could have a good opportunity.
Yeah, it's very early days in the day. We've only had 2 races in F3, both from Bahrain, and like you said before, we don't have any previous data to go on when it comes to this circuit for F3. They've never done it before. It's hard to tell, really. I mean, for purely nostalgia reasons, I want to see Seb Montoya do well. He did all right in his first 2 weekends, but I believe he's a rookie like most of the field are. Yep. So it's a difficult one. It really is tough to say who's going to do well this weekend. I mean, like I said before, from the home perspective, obviously Hugh Barter, he's Australian, and you mentioned Tommy Smith. He did not pull up any trees at all in Bahrain, but he does know this circuit, so maybe he could do well, but we don't know. But like you said before, safety cars and red flags are a definite possibility. I mean, you've got a field mostly full of teenage boys all going at each other, basically. So experience is not their strong suit, and around a track that is brand new to pretty much all of them, mistakes will be made. I think that's pretty much certain.
Yeah, 100%. Like, Yeah, like I said, it would be nice to see Tommy Smith or Hugh to kind of do well, but you just don't know because it's been quite all over the place. And again, we've only had one round. So with the F3 calendar being quite limited compared to F2, we don't really have a lot. You just have to rely on who are not the rookies. So Caleb Frederick, Franco Colapinto, Zach O'Sullivan, Kyle Collett, Rafael Villagomez, even though he didn't have a best one last round. Who else? Ida Cohen, Hunter Yini, like the Giuseppe Marti. Giuseppe could have a decent one for Campos, but you just don't know. I'm really excited. I might do the highlights. I'm trying to like be positive that I will wake up at these times and set my 10 alarms on my phone to be waking up in time for it. But I'm very not optimistic now that I'm like speaking about it out loud about the times and having to be up at like 2 a.m. midnight. So it'll be interesting for sure. Any bold predictions for either F2 or F3?
I mean, let's. I mean, I'll double down on what you said before about the F3. I'm gonna go with one of those races to have 10 DNFs of any description. Right, that's quite a lot. I know that I'm saying that the F3. On the F2 side of things, I mean, yeah, I mean Martins, he's a shout, and he'd be a pretty bold prediction. He's he's got podium twice in the two finishes he's had this season, so he's definitely one who has potential for that. But going off of results and stuff, I mean, he's already had a point, but I want to see Juan Correa do well. Obviously we know what he's been through. Long-time viewers of Grid Talk we covered the weekend. Obviously we didn't cover F2, but we did give a mention, of course, to the weekend when Antoine Aubert tragically lost his life, and Correa was very seriously hurt in that accident. And I would love to see him. It's great seeing him back in F2, but I'd love to get him, see him get a strong finish or maybe even a podium. That'll be one of my feel-good results of the year because, he's been relatively to hell and back. And, to have him back in F2, I think is brilliant. So, and another American driver as well. So, I'd like to see that personally.
I mean, 100%. I love to see him come back. He's come back so strong. Even in F3 last season, he didn't have the best season, but he did quite well consistently. And Ben Amsport is actually not a bad team to have racing under. So with the new sponsors and new ownerships that came into place last season. So we'll see, hopefully. I mean, I think I want a hometown driver on either the F2 or F3 podium. That's one bold. So either or. And I think it will be rookies both taking pole positions in F2 and F3.
Ooh, I like that. I mean, in a way, the inexperience of them, it's going to be less because they're all on an even keel, even playing field. So I can see logic behind that.
Yeah, and they're ready to take risks as well because they don't know anything different. Whereas a lot of these older drivers, I say older, they're younger than me, most of them. I think Jay Han is older than me just by a couple months, and I think Roy Nissany is the only other one and Ralph Washam. Those are the three drivers in F2 that are older than me. Everybody else in like F3 is much younger than me. So I say younger, but I think because they have more experience for it, they kind of know they don't want to push too hard. And also they've been in F2 for ages and they want to get into the F1. They want to get more higher up in their career. So they're not going to put their foot in the wrong place and do risky moves, which makes sense. But at the same time, it makes it a little bit boring sometimes on the track for some of these battles. But yeah. So that was almost close. So that is the F2 and F3 preview for Australia. I'm excited. It's going to be interesting. And obviously F1 will be quite interesting. And obviously we will cover that in Grid Talk we already have the preview out, which is you can find it on Spotify and on YouTube. And then we'll have the qualifying and race results episodes on this weekend as well, which will be live on Facebook. So let's look at F1 Academy. Tom and I have mentioned it a bit. we've not gone into too much detail because at the time there was a lot of information that we were a little bit unsure of. But we have the whole grid confirmed now. And some names, and we'll discuss, are ex-W Series drivers. You have some endurance drivers and some F4 regional drivers. But I would say it's a big mix of non-W Series or even F3 kind of testing. I think only a handful of them have done F3 testing through W Series. So it's going to be interesting. However, looking at the race calendar, every single race is the same time as F1 or F2 race weekends. And they're not racing at the same location.
No, they're not. That was a big surprise to me. I've just looked at the calendar now as well. And yeah, all the circuits apart from Valencia are used by F1. Sorry, Paul Ricard's not anymore. That's off the calendar, but very recently was. So yeah, I mean, they've gone with mostly F1 circuits. But for some reason, like you said, that I didn't realize that is a terrible decision. That's going to kill their viewing figures. I mean, we want to, encourage these women. We want to give these women a platform. And then, yes, obviously, we are giving them a platform with this series. But to have them compete at the same time as F1, I mean, you would have to be a very dedicated F1 Academy fan. A series that did not exist last year. I mean, yes, obviously, we had W Series, essentially the same thing, but you'd have to be an extremely dedicated fan to watch it live, or even at all. I mean, people have only got so many hours in the day to spend to watch motorsport. That is a baffling decision.
And Sky's not even said if they are the viewing for the UK listeners. Sky's not said if they are going to be showing it as well. So if it's the same time as F2 and F3, they have priority. Because I've said this on multiple other podcasts, when W Series was on Channel 4, even W Series was on Sky, if there was, more so on Channel 4, if there was something classified more important, W Series coverage got cut on Channel 4 and it swapped to the news or another sporting event. It was just really bad planning. And yes, they're supporting some really cool races, i.e. the Endurance Championship in Monza, and obviously their final race, round 7, will be in Austin, supporting F1. They're working with Freca as well for Barcelona, but some of the other ones that they're supporting, even though I'm big in motorsport, I don't recognize some of these, like the NASCAR Wheel Euro Series P9 Challenge or the Dutch Masters. It's just not as well planned, and we didn't even know about this. They announced it back in October, but then we only started uncovering information in the last month or two. Their first race is in actually a month today. Their first race, April 28th, and we've only just got a grid confirmed. We still not understanding what a bit of the structure is, how it's going to be covered. We know the points and a bit of it, but they also haven't done testing. There is no testing as well.
So everybody's gone into it blind, effectively. I mean, I'm just going to look it up now. I mean, that P9 challenge doesn't even have a Wikipedia page, which is a very bad sign.
Yeah. I mean, even the Paul Ricard one is not even supporting anything, which is, but even these drivers, some of these female drivers, there's 4 out of the 16 that have no background, according to Wikipedia. They have probably, obviously we've seen it from F1 Academy discussing it, but just because we can get more information via Wikipedia, some of it's quite interesting. But I know for Bianca Basmente, who's racing for Prema, she's been racing with Prema in regional, F4 regional for the Middle East. So she's had some connection with that and knows the car and the team very well. Same with Jessica Edgar and Abby Pulling with curling, British team, British background. But some of these are just kind of, I'm hopeful, and I hate to be quite negative about this, but because there's been so much pressure on female sport and how W Series ended very abruptly, and even W Series and the structure of W Series, take Jamie Chadwick, won every single season and couldn't even get an F3 seat, so she's had to go to IndyCar, which is not even F1 accredited racing. It's I just have no words. I hope it's going to be great, but I know for this season they've just not properly planned it well. I don't think so at all.
No, there's it's really bad signs, and like you said, with Jamie Chadwick as well. If she's moved away, if the female equivalent of Lewis Hamilton cannot get a Formula, not even an F2 drive, and not a Formula 3 drive. No disrespect to the Formula 3 field, but Jamie Chadwick's a 3-time champion in W Series or whatever it was. Just absolutely just dominated the whole series for its entire run. Would have won 4 championships if they ran one in 2020, most likely. It's just an absolutely baffling decision. I was so disappointed when I heard that W Series was going. Yes, I know it was apparently not profitable and all this and that, but at the same time, you think about the amount of money that teams are pumping into F1 that the FIA are giving out in prize money. It's an absolute tiny amount that they could have used just to prop up W Series, and eventually it could have become profitable. But more importantly than that, it's a platform, and you know exactly what it is: the W Series, the Women's Series, the Female Series. It makes sense. Formula Academy. I mean that sounds more like a football thing or something. I don't know.
Training teams.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like you wouldn't look at that and think, oh yeah, that's obviously the all-female series, the Academy. No, there's no indication at all of that. So yeah, they've swapped out one series for another. The only difference is now it has zero recognition. It's, from going off what we've just said, it seems pretty poorly organised as well. So I really hope it's a success as well. I really do. But like you, I am very pessimistic after seeing that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be interesting because obviously, like MP Motorsport, you have 2 sisters who are quite big in the F4 Middle Eastern regional scene, who are quite good, and obviously some old W Series drivers. I think also the fact that we have 5 teams: ART, Campos, MP, Prema, and Carling, who are in F2 and F3. They also will provide a lot more support, knowledge, equipment, and tech than I think the previous teams with W Series were, because a lot of those teams were other team members and everything. They've moved over to W Series, but they were ran by people that didn't have the best background in the sport. Whereas I think this is probably one of the benefits and positives of it, is bringing in these historic F2 and F3 teams who are quite successful over the years. I'll take Prema, for example. They've won quite a lot. They've supported drivers into F1. So I think it'll be a great one. However, the structure, it's not announced from my understanding. If a person wins F1 Academy, do they get a seat in F3? Can they not compete in F1 Academy anymore? How F3 structure is and how F2 structure is. If you win the championship, you don't. I personally believe, because these teams are connected to F3, there should be minimum 1 seat available next season for whoever wins. So if we take, I'm going to say Bianca, because I've interviewed her a few times and I've interacted with her through other motorsport content. If she wins with Prema, she should get an F3 Prema seat for the next season. But there's no rules or regulations according to the website, F1 Academy website, which only came about I think January, finally became a website, on social medias, absolutely wild. But there's no discussion. And I think I don't want a repeat of Jamie Chadwick winning all the time and just being stuck there. There needs to be growth. And that's what F1 Academy was meant to be. It's meant to be the 4th tier after Formula Regional, FRACA, F4 and all that. Go to F1 Academy, go to F3, 2, and 1. But just don't know at all.
Yeah, it is a tricky one, isn't it? Because the thing is, then, if I agree with you, I think there should be a seat available absolutely in F3 for the winner of the series. But then, which team is it for? Who do they go to? And without wanting to sound horrible, it's most likely the team that is kind of the teams won't want him most of the time, and it's shocking, and I don't agree with that. But unfortunately, the history of female drivers in F3 is not great, and it's a shame. I mean, Sophia Flores, she's done amazingly to come back. She's another one. I mean, she had if anybody's seen her crash in Macau about 3 years ago, I think it was, to come back from that, I can't even watch. I'm just getting goosebumps thinking about it now. And to come back from that and get to F3 again is fantastic, but there's really not many of them. And the only female in F2 that I can think of was the Colombian driver. I can't even remember her name. Tatiana Calderon, who finished behind Ranganathan in the championship that season.
She was IndyCar at the same time, though. She did half a season in IndyCar and then moved into F2. So obviously that was a couple rounds taken back. But I mean, even consistency, I think she DNF'd probably most of her F2 race career through injuries, and because she had a big crash as well.
Yeah, that's true.
But it still didn't pay the best picture. But I 100% agree.
No, I think it's a shame. I mean, I wish Jamie Chadwick all the best in IndyCar. I'm sure she'll do well. But like you said, it's not an FIA recognised thing. It's different, and it's not going to help her get into F1. I'd love to see her in F2. I really would do. I think she'd do all right, to be honest with you. I don't think she'd blow everybody away by any means. There's some supremely talented drivers in there. But for her first season, why the hell could she not do midfield? Exactly. I could easily see that.
Oh, 100%. I mean, some of these F1 Academy drivers who were ex-W Series, they actually did testing in F3 cars last season. And some of their times was on par to the consistent F3 drivers at the time. So I don't see why, like, it doesn't baffle my mind. Like, if you look at 2 times, one's better, what makes a difference about gender? Like, that's my thinking. Like, you want the best time, regardless of who it is. Like, I think some of the times was on par or like mid to like bottom third to the F3 drivers, which obviously they're not used to that style car as well, because W Series car was a different kind of spec compared to F3 cars. But yeah, I mean, they did quite all right with the 2-3 day testing, some of them. So it baffles me. It literally baffles me. And I hope it'll be good when the season starts. We'll be covering it on Formula Talk quite often, especially because some of the races will be during awkward times when F2 races or F3 races won't be on. Obviously, F1 will be on most of them, if not all of them. So that'll be covered on Grid Talk, but for Formula Talk, we'll probably be discussing it a bit more for sure. But I'm hoping for the best. And I think getting these new drivers coming in, some of these seasonal F regional and W Series to bring knowledge, bringing in historical teams might support. You got FIA backing, which W Series didn't really have backing. So who knows? Hopefully.
There are some positives to it, definitely. And like you said, you know, the fact that their teams are also an F2 and F3, it means they're probably not going to go anywhere. They're not their own entity by themselves. So they do have that going for them. But yeah, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. We'll see what happens.
That sounds like me for the Australia weekend. Oh God. But yeah. So that is episode 7 of Formula Talk. If you've enjoyed this podcast, we would love it if you could take 5 to leave us a 5-star rating on Spotify or a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. And if you're one of the 72% of people who have not yet subscribed to the channel, please consider helping us out with a like, subscribe, share, and follow. We'll be back next week to review the Australian Grand Prix. Hopefully our predictions were quite well. And George, more than welcome to join next week as well to come talk. Hopefully Tom will be with us as well. And maybe even a new guest as well. And we might be live. We've been saying this every single episode. We want to go live. We've been planning to go live. And I think this probably might be the best time to go live. So stay tuned. So as mentioned, Formula Talk is part of Grid Talk. Grid Talk is available on YouTube, where most episodes are recorded live, as well as Amazon Fire, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Music, Verbal, and Pocket Cast. Just search F1 Grid Talk, Formula 1 Grid Talk, for a back catalog of shows with previews, reactions to qualifying race and race results, and Formula Talk. Please consider supporting the channel on Patreon so we can get mics, lights, and better recording equipment. Also, as mentioned, make sure that you're subscribed so you're the first to know when each new weekly episode is released. We'll be back soon with plenty more Formula Talk content. Thank you for joining me, George. Loved having you.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Sophia. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, and you're always welcome, 100%. So great having you on for this episode. But yeah, thank you for listening, and that's the end of Formula Talk. Bye!